Hello, friends. Ted Wilcox here again to bring you into another thrilling chapter in our continuing saga of magic, mystery, and the American century. But before we begin, here's Charlie Pulcher with a brief review of our last episode.
Last time, Whiskey and Mickey formed an uneasy alliance and finally compared what they knew about the Demon Lord's motorcycle club. Rosie Fleischberg confirmed the military-grade tires tied to earlier abductions matched the evidence recovered from Hallie Baptiste's kidnapping scene. As traffic crawled across a Bay Area choking on carnival crowds and rising tension, the two investigators tested each other as carefully as the evidence itself. Mickey pushed at Whiskey's ties to the FBI. Whiskey pushed at the holes in Mickey's story. Both learned the other was hiding far more than they admitted. But one thing became clear. The Demon Lords were dangerous, connected, and almost certainly involved. Now, with fresh intel pointing toward the Whiskey Gulch saloon in East Palo Alto, Whiskey heads straight into vampire territory, searching for answers. And while he plans to cast a careful net, Mickey has something far louder in mind. What happens next? We'll find out now.
This is the Mythic Chronicles. Entry 1. Crime Wave. Chapter 28. Whiskey buys a beer. October 25th, 1951. Whiskey drew a slow breath, savoring the cool, charcoal-tinged air. The district known as Whiskey Gulch was a parallax. From one angle, a lively strip of restaurants, theaters, family-friendly attractions. Shift your perspective, and it snapped into something else entirely. Neon-lit dance halls, glitzy storefronts hiding back rooms they didn't advertise, bars, liquor stores, vices stacked shoulder to shoulder. Families leaving dinner mingled with bar hoppers, drunks, and johns. Their mismatched auras tangled, nodding into a tumultuous miasma that prickled at his senses. In his mind, Passenger echoed the breath. Ah, spicy yet sweet. Like fruit with lime and chili powder, refreshing after that god's-awful drive. Whiskey couldn't help but agree. Before the drive, he'd considered himself an expert on the human condition. 4.5 hours with Michelle McFinn had proved otherwise. Passenger had been quiet during the drive, content to bask in the infuriating woman's bewildering uniqueness. "I thought you liked her," Passenger sighed. "Yes, well, even with chocolate you eventually need a palate cleanse. She might just be too much of a good thing." Whiskey grimaced. She reminded him of an exhibition on how motion pictures worked that he'd seen at the World's Fair. Run at the right speed, sequential images created seamless movement. But cut them apart, shuffle them out of order, and you got a stuttering, chaotic mess. She was like that, if, when piecing it back together, you spliced in scenes from 3 entirely different films. Every time he figured he had a clear image, she stuttered into something else. "She's exhausting." Passenger pulsed a nod. "And effective. Those around her must adjust to her shifts, which is likely why she does it. Or she's certifiable," Whiskey countered. "What happens when she meets someone unwilling to play her game? Then she has a fight on her hands." Passenger pulsed a grin. "Which, I'd venture to guess, is also why she does it." Whiskey shook his head. "Exhausting. You didn't seem to mind toward the end," Passenger noted. "I'd say you even enjoyed matching wits with the hunter." Whiskey stopped outside a restaurant, pretending to study the menu. "Sometimes you have to see things through," he thought with a shrug. "I agreed to work with her. Plus, I'd be lying if I said I didn't find her perspective novel. It means there's still more to learn." He crossed the street toward the saloon. Besides, despite all her insanity, she did listen to reason. Eventually. A wooden sign hanging from the front porch caught his eye. Halloween-themed specials all week at the saloon. Come for the ghouls, stay for the girls. He pushed through the swinging doors into someone's attempt at recreating an Old West movie set. The air thickened with stale beer, perfume, and tobacco, casting a translucent haze that didn't quite obscure the stage. Women in low-cut flapper outfits danced before a rear projection screen playing black-and-white horror films. Scanning the crowd, Whiskey counted 9 vests, each embroidered with a crowned, sneering devil wreathed in flames. Their owners drank from glasses filled with dark red liquid. Near the stage, one vampire stood, wolf whistling before sitting to sip his drink, laughing with a buddy. A few others huddled at a nearby table, deep in conversation, while the final three sat at the end of the long bar, nursing their drinks. Whiskey slipped onto an open stool and waved down the bartender, a small man with a waxed mustache curling at the tips, straight out of vaudeville. "Howdy, what'll it be?" "Whatever's on tap." He set $1 on the bar. The man poured a golden, frothy pint and left him to it. Whiskey sipped his beer, scanning the room through the bar's mirror. Satisfied no one was watching, he lowered his gaze and triggered vigilance. The bar's clamor faded. Music dulled, laughter blurred. Background noise peeled away until only what he focused on remained. He zeroed in on 4 vampires locked in hushed conversation, and heard nothing. His brow furrowed. Is something wrong with vigilance? Passenger made a thoughtful sound. I don't believe so. You still hear the creak of their vests, the scuff of their chairs. They aren't talking. Whiskey pushed his focus further and realized Passenger was right. The rasp of denim, the scrape of boots, all of it was there. He risked another glance toward the bikers. Mouths moved, hands gestured, lips shaped words, but no sound reached him. It could be some kind of magical screen, Passenger mused. But magitech like that needs anchor points, walls, doors to function. And we've no knowledge of anything that mutes just voices and nothing else. These bikers are connected, but not that connected. Unease crawled up Whiskey's spine. Look at the 3 by the bar, Passenger said, drawing his attention as another group of vampires in biker leathers shifted, sipped, and looked around. Keep watching. Whiskey did, and moments later watched them repeat the motions. Exactly the same sip, the same glance, the same subtle shift of weight. In the bar's constant churn, he might have missed it, but once seen, it was impossible to unsee. He flicked his gaze toward the 2 near the stage. The wolf whistler stood, whistled, clapped, laughed, sat down, leaned in, spoke to his companion, precisely as he had when Whiskey first entered. They're repeating themselves, he thought. All of them, like they're on a timer. He narrowed his focus, gaze sliding between the groups. Mouths moved, hands gestured, no sound. And their eyes. They were open, awake, but something about them was wrong. Clouded, detached, like mannequins painted to seem alive. Whiskey's attention snapped away as Passenger pulsed a sharp, startled jolt. When he saw what had caused the disturbance, he couldn't quite hold back a groan. So much for listening to reason, Passenger chuckled as a loud, far too familiar voice called out. Brandy? Whiskey frowned and tried to pretend he hadn't heard her. Oh, good, Passenger said, dry as dust. Stay low and don't move. I think her vision might be motion-based. As I live and breathe, Mr. Brandy? Whiskey sighed and closed his eyes as he released vigilance. His focus slipped away like sand through his fingers. Exhausting. When he opened them, the bemused smile was already in place. He turned to face the sauntering McFinn. She plopped onto the stool beside him, pulling a cigarette from her purse. He checked the vampires, still locked in their cycles. Why, Miss Hasty, he said. I didn't expect to see you so soon. Then, lower, what happened to staying out of sight? She laughed, flicked open a lighter, lit her cigarette, and beckoned the bartender. Howdy, what can I get you? The little man asked. McFinn beamed. Howdy, she echoed, leaning forward to scan the bottles behind the bar. What do I want? She mused, eyes darting across labels. You come in with an idea, but the second you sit down, boop, she flicked her fingers skyward. Pops right out. What's your name, barkeep? The bartender blinked. Harvey. Can I help with your... You know what would be lovely, Harvey? She cut in, grinning. A Ramos Gin Fizz. Harvey's smile thinned. Sure, but it takes a while, and I'm the only— Well then, you'd best hop to it, Harv. She jabbed a thumb toward Whiskey. My friend here's buyin'. Harvey looked at Whiskey, who sighed and nodded. Right away, the bartender muttered, gathering ingredients. McFinn leaned back, fingers drumming the bar, eyes sweeping the room. And what was that for? Whiskey asked through clenched teeth. She pretended to inspect a nail. We could beat around the bush, or get to the part where we get answers. These guys are bullies. How do you handle a bully? By harassing their little friends, apparently, Whiskey muttered. Her lips twitched, but when she spoke again, her voice dipped lower, so quiet that only he detected it. Harvey here's made you, been signaling someone behind the stage. Whiskey blinked, his gaze shifting to the mirror behind the bar. Passenger? I don't know, it admitted after a pause. I was focused on the vampires, but now that I'm checking, it's possible. Whiskey frowned. How had he missed that? McFinn caught his look and gave him a smug little grin before resuming her not-so-subtle scan of the bar, as if everything was all going exactly as planned. Why don't you let me take it from here, she said, exhaling a slow, deliberate curl of smoke. Take what from here? Whiskey shot back. We had an agreement. I said give me an hour. I'm trying to— Sorry. She cut him off. Gave him a look he couldn't quite place. New plan. Follow my lead or get out of the way. He frowned. What? Before he could press, McFinn gasped. Oh, Nosferatu. Whiskey stiffened, eyes flicking toward the vampires. One, a large, balding man with a birthmark sprawled over his eye, broke from his loop with a blink and glanced at the bounty hunter. Oblivious, she smiled, pointing at the screen behind the dancers. It's a movie, dear. Max Schreck, Greta Schroeder. She spoke loud enough to carry. A bit on the nose, considering where we are, but hey, commitment to theme counts. Whiskey shifted, just enough to glance at the screen while keeping the vampire in view. Meanwhile, McFinn called out, bright as ever. Oh, Harvey! She waved the sweaty bartender over. On second thought, Harv, I'm in the mood for something more local. Harvey kept a straight face, but only just. Very good, ma'am. If you're a wine drinker, we've got— You know, Harv, she cut in, voice syrup sweet. Can I call you Harv? That does sound lovely, but I'm thinking even more local. She exhaled the last puff of smoke, crushing the cigarette into the ashtray. You wouldn't know where I might find Hallie Baptiste, would you? Whiskey fought the urge to drag a hand down his face. From the corner of his eye, he saw the balding vampire's glare sharpen. Harvey said, eyes darting about the bar for any sign of help. Who? McFinn leaned back, sighing as if bored. No? Well then, how about Rose Buffet, Alice Suena, Dorothy Alcantara, Elsa Sierva, Merida Tejan? Harvey swallowed. She snapped her fingers, flashing an apologetic smile. That's right. Sorry, Harv. We forgot to introduce ourselves. She nodded toward Whiskey. I'm Agent Manhattan, and this here— her smile widened— is Agent Old-Fashioned. We're with the FBI. Whiskey barely kept his jaw from hitting the bar. He turned to her, disbelief written plain on his face. What? You get it, right? Because of your actual name— well, not your actual name, but you get the idea. The balding vampire whispered to his companions. As if a spell had been broken, one stood, peeling off, slipping behind the curtain near the stage. The other, along with every other vampire left in the large room, turned to watch Whiskey and McFinn. Whiskey swallowed. The air became heavy with tension. His eyes completed their cycle of the watching vampires, ending on Harvey. The little bartender looked like he might faint. If there's a problem, I'm sure I can— No problem at all, Harv, McFinn said, tone colder now, stiletto sharp. Unless, of course, you think abducting 6 innocent women is a problem. As if on cue, 8 chairs screeched against wood, and 8 vampires rose in unison, stalking toward the bar. What's going on over there? Called the bald vampire, closing in. Harvey blanched as he turned to the big man. Not sure, Frank. These two, agents, McFinn supplied, flashing a badge. FBI. Harvey latched onto that like a lifeline. These agents have questions. McFinn turned to face the advancing vampires. Each towered over her, their muscled shoulders and round bellies straining against leather vests. She grinned and extended a hand. Frank, was it? Frank ignored her, his stained face twisting into a deep-set scowl. Get back to work. Harvey didn't need telling twice. Bye, Harv, McFinn called after him. Then, to Frank, whatever you're paying him, it's not enough. He's a gem. Frank's glare didn't waver. Your badge don't track. McFinn cocked her head. Come again? Your badge, Frank repeated. It don't track. The FBI don't take female agents. His lip curled. And all I see are a couple of bitches. The vampire beside him grinned, flashing elongated canines. Whiskey's gaze swept the room. Patrons, employees, innocents. If this escalated, people would get hurt. That was not the way. McFinn's antics left him no choice. Enough of this, he thought, rising. Even at his full height, he reached Frank's chin. Still, he smiled, focused, and triggered passion. His will surged forward, washing over the vampire's auras. To his surprise, their defenses weren't merely weak, they were shattered. Whiskey's will flowed over the remains like a swarm of locusts descending upon broken ruins, slipping effortlessly into their auras. Beneath those ruins, he found their wills writhing like oil-soaked eels. Again, he was startled by how depleted they were, like bones already picked clean. Yet something remained, a need to lash out, to hurt those who would hurt them. Distilled aggression, reduced to raw, seething rage. And rage was something he could sink his teeth into. He latched onto their fury, siphoned it away, tamped it down until it was no more threatening than a smoldering coal. Without their rage, the vampires had little left. As one, they blinked in confusion. Postures slumped, muscles unclenched. A meager meal, Passenger sighed. But I suppose something's better than nothing. Whiskey grinned. Easy, gentlemen, he said, sliding a wad of cash from his pocket. We don't want trouble. I'm sure we can come to an agreement. He was aware of McFinn's eyes on him. Glancing over, the intensity of her glare startled him. Enough of that, she murmured. Then she touched the ring on her finger. Whiskey couldn't quite see what happened next, but he definitely felt it. Golden light flared and something seized the tether binding him to the vampires, yanked it taut, and hacked through with what felt like dull scissors. Passenger hissed as whiplash slammed into him, doubling him over with a grunt. His gut twisted. Breath caught, sharp and sudden. When he looked up, McFinn was smirking down at him, satisfaction gleaming in her eyes. Oh, what just happened? Dunno how, Passenger panted. But she cut off passion. All right, I've decided. I don't like her anymore. My friend here is too polite, McFinn continued, pivoting toward the stunned vampires. What he meant to say is, we know you're responsible for abducting 7 local women. The words struck like gunfire. Frank's confusion darkened, his gaze locked onto McFinn. What did you say, bitch? The room tensed, but McFinn only sighed. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize you were ugly and hard of hearing. She cleared her throat sharply, exaggeratedly. Her next words cut through the music, the chatter, and the thin veneer of civility in equal measure. We know you took those women. Now either take us to them, or to someone important enough who can, before I finish what somebody started when they redecorated your stupid, ugly face. The reaction was instant. Patrons gasped. The piano player faltered. Dancers froze mid-step. Eyes flicked to the bar, to McFinn, to Frank. You know, Harv, McFinn drawled, never looking away from Frank. Now that I think about it, I will take that drink. You suppose you could? Even through the lingering whiplash, Whiskey felt Frank's rage flare hot. His hand dipped toward his vest. That's enough! The voice cracked through the room like a whip. Frank froze. The room's pulse shifted, subtle but absolute, like gravity tilting toward the owner of the voice. Every head turned. At the center of the room stood a well-muscled man, flanked by the vampire who'd vanished earlier. The man was average height, early middle age, handsome but severe. Dark brown eyes so deep they were nearly black swept across the bar beneath a sharp, military-style salt-and-pepper haircut. He looked much like he had in the photo from Whiskey's file on the Demon Lords, except for the jagged scar slashing across his throat. "Ah," said Passenger, "the man behind the curtain." Beside Whiskey, McFinn grinned, crossing her arms. "Hiya, Butch." Henry Butcher, undisputed boss of the Demon Lords, let his gaze linger on McFinn before flicking to the surrounding bikers. "Stand down," he said quietly. 9 vampires stepped back. Butcher swept the room, eyes settling on the piano player. "Nothing to see here." The man flinched, hastily resuming his tune. The dancer stiffly continued, and gradually a conversation murmured back into life. Satisfied, Butcher focused again on McFinn and Whiskey, closing the distance between them. The vampires parted for him like a leather and denim sea. The 6 newcomers silently retook their seats. "I hear you got questions," Butcher said, locking eyes with McFinn. "Sure do," she replied. "And you're the guy who can answer them?" He gave a curt nod, eyes sweeping the bar. "Not here." Without another word, Butcher turned, striding back the way he'd come. Frank and 2 others fell into step behind him. McFinn turned to Whiskey, grabbed his forgotten beer, and took a long, pleased pull. "See?" she said, winking before sauntering after the vampires. "Everything's going according to plan." Whiskey exhaled slowly. "You don't have to follow," reminded Passenger. "Leave the crazy woman to her fun." Whiskey's gaze flicked toward the exit. And then what? Walking away would only cause more problems. More lives could be at risk. Not the way. He needed to find Hallie. Time was running out. He shook his head. "Sometimes you have to see things through," he muttered. Then, with one last exhale, he followed the bounty hunter.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Mythic Chronicles. The story continues every Tuesday and Thursday. If you're enjoying the journey, please consider rating and reviewing the podcast. Your words might help bring more mythics into the fold. To listen ahead, unlock bonus content, and gain access to VIP Discord roles and behind-the-scenes updates, check out our Patreon, or visit us at SeanTLaffertyBooks.com. I'm Sean. Thanks again for being here.